Go, 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 go. Nice. That was Glid. There we go. Sub 1 minute. Nice. Yo, guys, what is up? Mike's in our first Descendant video, and today we're going over my updated guide for Gley. Now, I put out a Gley guide like a few weeks ago. It was very budget. It had 2 catalysts on it. We used rocket launchers, and I talked about a lot of other builds that you could go on Gley, and then I wanted to do them, but I, at the time, didn't have her fully invested into. So in this video, I'm going to be showing off a bunch of different Gley builds that I've set up, a catalyst version of Gley that we can do a gun platform build and use her to melt bosses with just guns. We've got a 4 build setup so that we can use Massacre to melt bosses. And then we've also got a really interesting mobbing setup. And we also have like infinite rocket launcher Gley. It's going to probably be a longer video because there's a lot to talk about. But I hope you guys enjoy the guide. Let's get right into it. So the very first thing to talk about is reactors. Now, Gley likes a lot of different reactors. There's a reactor that you can go for her 4 ability, Massacre, which we're going to be talking about in a second. If you did not know, Massacre is Gley's 4th ability, which allows her to pull out a unique weapon. And with this unique weapon, you're going to get the damage of your weapon plus additional damage from your skill power. So it's like basically shooting a much stronger version of your weapon, and it is affected by skill power and skill power modifier. And so for that, you really want to get the most damage out of it. You're going to be looking for this specific build, a Python mounted reactor with non-attribute and dimension, and the most important role is skill cooldown. You really need to find one with skill cooldown. If you can get non-attribute damage, dimension damage, damage to Colossus, duration, all of those things are fantastic, but it is kind of a must-have to get skill cooldown on this setup. We'll talk about other mountings and other reactors once we get to her other builds, but this is kind of the main reactor that I've been using on her. Once we're using her as like a gun platform, you really just care about skill cooldown. But yeah, that is our reactor for this setup. So now let's talk about builds. We've got quite a few to go over. We've got our group play build, our mobbing build, our solo play build, and our weapon platform build. The big difference between solo play and group play is the group play will have more survivability. When you're playing with teammates, the bosses, you have more HP. There's more likely to get hit. You're going to kill the boss a little bit slower. So group play is just kind of a less glass cannon-y Gley. Solo play is going to be more damage and higher risk than mobbing, just for killing trash mobs, doing any sort of like PvE content that's like out in the world that isn't bosses. And then our weapon platform build is going to be specifically for just using her 3 ability. That's where we're going to disregard the 4 altogether and just be focusing on using her as a weapon platform to shoot guns. Now, to start us off, the Transcendent module that we're going to be using for a lot of our builds here is Massive Sanguification. This is, in my opinion, Gley's best Transcendent module. The big thing that's super nice about Massive Sanguification, let me just get rid of our resource here, is when you load into an intercept, you don't have any resource, you can't use your 4. If you pop your Frenzy and then you pop your 2, you are just going to be able to instantly go into your Massacre, which is amazing. And then once you're in Massacre, then you're going to be hitting your 3rd ability, and this is what gives you the infinite ammo. We're going to be stacking up Mental Focus on this build, so you can start like pre-firing it basically before the boss even spawns, and then you can just slay out. We've got a very comfortable loop setup, so you're just going to want to be hitting your V. You can keep up your full stacks of Mental Focus and just shoot everything with Massacre. It's really, really cozy. So for the mods that we're going to be using, we've got 4 basically cooldown mods. Focus on non-attribute, focus on dimension, MP conversion, and nimble fingers. These are all going to be providing a lot of cooldown for our 3, which we're going to want on a comfortable loop so that we never have to lose our 4. Right now, we've got an 8.6 second duration and a 7.8 second cooldown. So very, very easy loops. These do not have to totally line up. It is okay if your duration is slightly less than your cooldown because of cast times, but you're trying to get these 2 as close to possible so that you can infinitely loop her 3. Now, in addition to our cooldown mods, we're going to be using increased HP and Battle of Stamina. Stamina gives us a little bit more duration. You can use Stim Accelerant. We are going to be using this on the group play build for a little bit more survivability. Just a little bit extra duration is quite nice. Then we're going to be using Skill Extension and an Outstanding Investment. These are going to be our 2 duration mods with Battle of Stamina to get as much duration out of her 3 is possible. Even though we're like over our duration amount, you know, if you have to redo your 3, that is time that you are not damaging in a DPS loss. And so that's why we're kind of focusing on as much duration as possible. Once again, if you wanted to swap this out for like Stim Accelerant, you get a little bit more HP, which is quite nice. Next up, we've got 2 mods that are kind of up to you. Now, we're going to be using Walk a Tightrope for most bosses. The other option besides Walk a Tightrope is Ambush. We've gotten this set up so that you can freely swap those. Ambush is really great against bosses that are easy to stagger and that are going to be spending a fair bit of the fight in their stagger. For example, this against Devour is really, really nice. Devour is super easy to stagger. Get him down and just blast him with Ambush, which is going to give us a whole bunch of extra damage for bosses that are going to be spending less time in their stagger, such as like Gluttony or Frostwalker or Dead Bride. I personally like Walk a Tightrope. It's just very consistent feeling and less conditional. And then lastly, we've got Spear and Shield. Spear and Shield is better for this build than Iron Defense. Iron Defense gives you slightly more damage when you're at full HP with Massacre, but as we're going to be getting lower damage or lower HP, we're going to be getting more modifier, not only from our Massacre bonus, but from also Walk a Tightrope. And if we already have a lot of modifier, that's when we want base power. So I tested this a few times, and when we're low HP, which is where we're going to want to be optimally, we're going to get more damage out of Spear and Shield, so that's why we're rocking that. Now, I do want to point out that I originally catalyzed skill simplification onto this build rather than focus on dimension. That is what I was going to use. That was what I was planning on using. But after further investing into Gley, I found out that in order to properly use skill simplification, which could have given us a little bit of a damage increase, the gear requirements just get a little bit crazy, where in order to comfortably fit skill simplification, you have to be wearing the Annihilation set, and you like have to get good cooldown, like gold cooldown on your reactor, or like purple cooldown and purple duration. And I don't want to like make a build guide that you guys can't use without going like full or like with like having to grab like basically perfect gear to be able to operate correctly. So if you do have a like god tier reactor, or you just want to use the Annihilation set, which is less damage than the Slayer set, which we'll talk about in a second, you absolutely can swap out skill simplification for focus on dimension. And then instead of an outstanding investment, well, you could still use this, but you could also use like maximize duration and pop that there. Also, a really good setup. It kind of just depends on your level of gear that you have, and I think this is the more cozy gear set or build to go into for anyone. So that is what I'm using. So for her Massacre, there's actually quite a few weapons that you can use. I'm currently using the Python. If you want to fully set up a Thunder Cage for Massacre, it's actually really good because the Python, or unlike the Python, the Thunder Cage can crit. And the tough thing about the Python is if you're not critting, you're basically doing no damage. So the Thunder Cage is a lot easier weapon to operate. If you aren't confident in your aim, I'd actually recommend going for the Thunder Cage. The big issue with the Thunder Cage is it's a mobbing weapon, and so I didn't want to change my build on the Thunder Cage to make it a bossing specific weapon just for Gley. And so the Python I'm not really using for anything else. The Python is a fantastic choice. It's absolutely one of her best options, but I'm just saying that it's not like the only option for Massacre. The other cool option is the Eternal Willpower, which you can also use. You do have to use a purple reactor if you want to use the Eternal Willpower, but the Willpower is also another great option for her 4. Now, with the 4 on the Python that I'm rocking right now, I am going to be rocking a few really important mods. We've got our base damage with Rifle Reinforcement and Action and Reaction. We've got our fire rate up to increase our damage. We've got Weak Point Sight and Have Aiming. We really want to build this thing towards weak point damage. I'm going to be rocking Electrical Enhancement, which adds more electric damage on mine, with Electric Priority, which increases that electric damage and gives us a reload time modifier of 30%. The reload time modifier we obviously don't care about because we're not reloading on Gley and we're not reloading with Massacre. And then the last 2 mods, you could kind of socket anything. I didn't want to change my build too much from my like mobbing Python build, but I just grabbed Weak Point Aiming for a little bit more weak point damage and Maximize Weight Balance for a little bit more weak point damage. If you wanted to, you could actually build crit. This weapon is not a crit weapon. Obviously, it's got like a 5% crit. But if you do build, for example, concentration priority and better concentration, you're going to net out like an 8% damage increase on that, even though you're not critting that much. There's not too many like amazing mods that you can put there because we don't care about mag size. We don't care about reloading. We've already got our element. We can't add more like weak point stuff. And so kind of crit becomes really one of the only things left to build into there. That is why the Python is a solid weapon. But like, for example, the Thunder Cage, you can build crit and weak point. And that is also a really great bossing weapon for Gley. Now let's go over her group play build. On group play, we're going to be using Stim Accelerant for way more HP than when we're using in solo, which is Battle of Stamina. More survivability in group play. We've got HP Collector maxed out, so whenever you're hitting an enemy, you're going to be recovering your HP. And this is basically the solo play version, just with a little bit less damage and a little bit more survivability. If you're going into a group, this will give you a comfortable ability to carry and not die all that much because you've got a ton of HP, you've got tons of ways to recover your HP, and you're going to be tanky, but also putting out a disgusting amount of damage. So this build is very comfy if you're looking for a cozy Gley to just nuke bosses with. The reason I'm not using HP Collector on the solo play build and why I didn't catalyze Walk a Tightrope plus HP Collector is most of the time in solo, the bosses are dead before there's time to really go and shoot all the ads. And so that's why it's kind of a little bit of a loss on the solo play build, and that's why I set that up like that. Now for our weapon platform build, once again, this is not focusing on the 4 at all. We're just focusing on making her the best gun character that we can. For this, you do not need leveled mods on non-attribute and dimension. These are doing quite literally nothing for us. You could use rank 1 mods. We're just slotting these in for the cooldown that they're going to provide, along with MP conversion and nimble fingers. This is really great so that we can have a lot of duration and cooldown for our 3. So this is up 100% of the time. The big thing that we're going to be adding here is we're going to be using maximized duration. This gives us more duration for less skill power modifier, which once again, we do not care about skill power modifier. So losing it is fine. We're going to be using shield conversion. This is going to give us a lot of defense rather than using like spear and shield because we no longer need this skill power. We're going to still be using Walk a Tightrope, which gives us a bunch of firearm attack. We're also going to be slotting in shot focus, which is going to give us even more firearm attack. I technically actually should be rocking Stim Accelerant rather than HP here. Just for slightly more HP. And then lastly, our Transcendent module is going to be Predator Instinct. This reads, using a firearm while frenzied gradually increases firearm attack. Now, the weird thing with this mod is it's like unbelievably not required for this at all. Basically, the issue with this, once I pop it, I'm basically doing less damage for like 1 second to 2 seconds. Until I actually build up Predator Instinct. And then once I build up Predator Instinct for level 2 for 2 seconds of firing, then I'm going to get a damage increase. But like for your very first few, like your like very first second of shooting, you're at less damage. But we're maximizing the duration on our 3 to 9 seconds. So you are going to make up that damage. It's only 7% firearm attack. So it's really, really unbelievably not important. But if you're trying to squeak out a little bit extra damage, Predator Instinct you can use here. You can also just use Massive Sanguification for some like AoE healing if you wanted to do that. But to make her the best gun character, Predator Instinct does provide her with a slightly larger increase to her gun damage. For the weapon platform Gley build, this is the Greg's Reversed Fate that I was using. We're going to be using Mental Focus on it because we're using it with Gley so that we can just kind of spam Greg Reversed Fate on like, you know, you never have to reload, never have to stop shooting. I have a full build video and breakdown on the Greg's Reversed Fate if you want to like understand more of why I'm using like electrical enhancement. But I'm going to save that stuff for the other video because this video is already probably going to be running pretty long. But that is the build on the Greg's Reversed Fate. Lastly, for the other weapon that you can use with the gun platform, it's not just the Greg's Reversed Fate. Honestly, you could basically, I mean, it's set up to use basically any weapon, and during Legacy is also another great choice. But with the Vestigial Organ, I still haven't really invested in this thing. It's kind of nutty without having to invest into it. Obviously, it doesn't have a crit chance or a crit damage, so there's not too many things to like really invest into it. There is some tech right now in the game where if you shoot a rocket into the air past a boss, all of your shots until that shot explodes continue to get strength and first shot. I still think weak point expansion is like the better option for just more consistency, because if the boss doesn't die, then you got to reload, and it's just a little bit more complicated. But this is a ton of extra damage for your rockets. If you did want to like fully invest into Rocket Gley, there's a few more mods that you could toss on this thing, which I don't have the catalyst or capacity to do right now. But focus fire for more weak point damage would absolutely be awesome. And then you could use any element on this thing with like space. Like, for example, if you're going to use electric enhancement, just really juicing the damage out of this thing, you could then go for something like electric priority, which gives you more electric attack and more reload time modifier. Obviously, you don't care about the reload time modifier, but that plus focus fire would really amp up the damage of Rocket Launcher Gley, which is already really strong. Rocket Launcher Gley is not something to be slept on, in my opinion. You can hard carry bosses with this, particularly Molten Fortress. Molten Fortress launches these fire orbs into the air that will absolutely ruin your team if you guys don't have like good coordination or accuracy on the Molten Orbs. And Rocket Launcher Gley can just shoot at Molten Fortress before any of the orbs even spawn. And so you can basically carry that entire run for your team, which is fantastic. Rocket Launcher Gley is also really good at carrying Frostwalker. Frostwalker has these little leg bits that when it's in immune phase, you have to break the leg bits and you have to hit them precisely with every other weapon, and it's really hard to hit. Rocket Launcher Gley does not care about that because the splash damage hits the weak points, and you can delete all of Frostwalker's weak points really easily with Rocket Launcher Gley. So even though this build has Massacre, and I showed off Greg's, and there's all these other cool new things, I promise you Rocket Launcher Gley is still a very good staple of the like Gley builds, and she can absolutely help your team out. She's not the best in slot option, but there are use case scenarios where bringing in the Vestigial Organ is probably your best bet for certain fights. And lastly, we've got a mobbing build. This is going to be focused on using her massive sanguification to be able to spam her second ability as an AoE damage ability. This ability has some crazy range. It's actually larger range than a maxed Bunny 3, even with high voltage on. And the big things that we're going to be putting on here are MP conversion, nimble fingers, and multi-talented. Multi-talented gives us another 20% skill cooldown whenever we use a dimension skill. Her second ability is a dimension skill, and we can pair that with a bunch of range and some damage and some lots of HP to get a build that is able to hit like kind of a ridiculous amount of radius. Let's see if we're close enough to hit these guys. Let's pop that, pop this. Yeah, it looks like we might not have been able to hit the guys in the far end of it. But we're able to just spam our second ability, which is, you know, it's not the hardest hitting ability in the game, but we can hit a ton of things with it. And there's also a little trick that we can do. So let me get low health again. We're not full health here. If I hit my second ability and do damage to the enemies, there's like a slight delay before I get healing. So I can hit my second ability and then pop my Q. I did that a little too soon. I had to wait for the damage numbers to appear. So pop that, damage numbers appear, and then I'm actually going to get healed if I change from my frenzy state or from my frenzy state to non-frenzy. We'll do that one more time. So here, I'm going to be losing HP. We're going to be losing HP. And then for this one, as soon as the damage numbers appear, we'll hit our first ability. And then we actually get healed, and we still get to do damage, which is very nice. Gley, not the best mobbing character, but if you wanted a way to mob with her, just to kind of constantly spam AoE damage and healing for yourself while also being able to use weapons, this is a pretty cool way of doing it. The key mods here are your cooldown mods and multi-talented, so that you're able to spam this reliably, and then we want as much range as possible, and then we've got a little bit more AoE. You could throw on, like, if you really wanted to like min-max Gley just for mobbing, there's some changes that you could make to this to get a little bit more damage out of this. However, I consider Gley to be a bossing character, so We do have like an empty socket that we can't really fill anything right now because of multi-talented being in a wrong mod, but this is our setup for mobbing. Lastly, for components, if you are looking to delete a boss as fast as possible, the Slayer set is just your best in slot set. It gives you the 26% increased skill power. For Massacre, this is really important. However, it absolutely guts your survivability. If I put on Slayer set right now, for example, I'm at 7,600 HP, which is not a lot of HP on Gley. So I don't recommend, well, technically I'm not on like the right build there. Now I'm at 10,000 HP. But Slayer set, more damage, less survivability. If you are running in groups, I do recommend full Annihilation set. Annihilation set is also really great on Gley. It's going to give you the duration as well as the damage increase and HP recovery, all of things which Gley really, really likes. So the Annihilation set is the more comfy set for Gley. Slayer set is less comfy, but it is more damage. So kind of depending on what you're wanting to rock there. Let's just put on the full Annihilation set so it looks pretty. But yeah, that is the Annihilation set. You don't have to wear a set on Gley if you're looking to go for like super survivability. You could wear 2-piece Annihilation. You could also rock like Decimator set or Acrobat set for 2-piece crit chance or damage, but I kind of like the Annihilation set 4-piece bonus for her. Lastly, I do just want to mention one thing, and that is with Gley, like you're going to be using your abilities, you're going to constantly be lowering your health. If you kill an ad, if you kill enemies and you're about to run over health, make sure that you are getting out of her frenzied state so that you are getting that increased health from the ads. If you're going to be popping HP collector, you can kill an ad and get out of your frenzied state. One of the biggest mistakes that I see on Gley is just kind of only living in her frenzied state, which you are going to be taking more damage in and also healing less. If you are really low health and you need the HP, make sure you get out of her frenzied state. You also always have, with a lot of the builds on this setup, you always have Sanguification to pull from, which if you have enemies nearby you, you can use as a way to heal yourself. You will out heal the like HP loss with Sanguification on if you are near enemies. And yeah, those are just some general tips.